All right. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. My name is Alex Olshansky. I'm a doctoral candidate in the College of Media and Communication at Texas Tech University. I study science communication broadly, but I focus on how people's cultural values, worldviews, and prior attitudes towards science influence their perceptions of both bad science information like pseudoscience and conspiracy theories, but also good science information and new technology. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is a project, some preliminary work that my colleagues and I have tentatively entitled Best Practices in External Communication for Cyber Infrastructure Technology. And so cyber infrastructure, as you may have heard from some of the talks yesterday, is just a fancy word for advanced high-performance computing technology or supercomputing technology, you take your pick. But cyber infrastructure, CI, is changing and revolutionizing the way we do science by enabling scientists to make discoveries from big data processing, data visualization, et cetera, and just really advancing science and research and discovery and education in the US. And so the goal, as acknowledged by the National Science Foundation, is to increase the adoption of this technology within and among more and more STEM fields. And so this also presents a challenge because of the complex nature of cyber infrastructure, of the scope and just the requisite knowledge necessary to adopt and use these kinds of tools. Presents a big challenge and a barrier for widespread adoption. And so this project was kind of birthed out of a larger project, which out of a funded NSF career project, which is looking at capacity building for CI research and collaborative teams. But as part of this project, 132 CI professionals from HPC centers from across the country were interviewed. And so my colleagues and I analyzed these transcripts using grounded theory and thematic analysis to find some common themes, common practices that these professionals across the country are doing to enable more adoption of this technology. So we kind of compiling a collection of best practices for external communication. And we specify external communication because it's as opposed to internal communication. So internal both within the CI community itself or within CI teams. So we're specifically looking at external communication. And so this work is being done with my colleagues Chaitra Kulkarni and Cassie Hayes, who are on the call today. So one of the first themes that we came across, and is really one of the more fundamental first steps in increasing adoption, is raising awareness, right? People are not going to adopt your technology if they're not aware of the technology. So raising awareness is one of the first key steps. And this involves aspects of advertising, marketing, and PR, which involves things like having a social media presence, marketing, branding your technology as new, as exciting. Many of these high-performance computing centers are co-located within universities across the country. And so what these HPC centers do is actively go out and visit every department in the university, either yearly or every other year, in order to kind of get the word out, to let people know that they're there and that they have these tools available to them. Similarly, some of them have collected new lists of new incoming faculty. So every year when there's new faculty coming on board, they will get lists of them and go out and actively meet with them one-on-one. And then we have publicizing publications. So it was emphasized that if you're not publishing, the fact that you're using these tools and that the fact that you can publish from using these tools, fewer and fewer people are gonna see it. So the more you publish about CI tools, the more you can publicize those publications, the more people read them, the more people will adopt and see that this technology is useful. Establishing education and training programs was another theme that we found. So these outreach training programs, hands-on training, workshops, classes, tutorials, etc., are super valuable in having people just experience the technology themselves. And in these cases, you can actually tailor these training courses to user-specific needs. So getting your hands on this technology and having it being presented in a way that's very specific to your needs, to your work, enhances the likelihood that someone will adopt this technology. Some of these HPC centers have also implemented things like summer institutes or engagement programs where they engage students all the way from high school to postdoc. And they do things like community engagement as well. So they'll hold events like build a thing in a day type events where they invite people, both faculty and people from the community, to build a cluster in a day. So this is the type of thing that gets people talking to other people about the high performance computing technology, and increases the likelihood that the technology will be adopted by other people and diffuse further. Building relationships is also a key part in external communication. So building relationships with users, establishing this trust, and having this kind of two-way communication. Here's the tools that we have. This is the capacity that we have. This is what we can provide. How can we help you achieve what you're trying to do? So having this kind of two-way communication, establishing trust and confidence, both confidence and trust then promote further adoption. So if you are confident in the technology and the teams that are there to help you, you're much more likely to tell other people about the technology. And then knowing and understanding the subtleties in communicating to different stakeholders, right? So different stakeholders in CI will have different ways of communicating and have different ways of needing to be communicated to. So know your audience. Are you communicating to CI users, right, who might need a more technical type of communication, versus are you communicating to external funders like the NSF, funding agencies who may need a kind of a bigger picture approach, versus are you talking to the public, right, who may need even a bigger type of picture approach. So avoiding this kind of one size fits many communication approach is key for external communication. And then finally, we have some of these HPC centers have implemented a kind of diffusion feedback system. So where they'll implement surveys to both for users, people that they've had engagements with, facilitations for, really to get an understanding of how you can improve these kinds of engagements going forward, but also you can get a kind of sense of your network effects or diffusion effects. So you can ask questions like, have you trained other faculty, other students, other postdocs, et cetera? And so this gives you a good understanding of the diffusion of the technology. And so again, this is very preliminary work. And so with that, I thank you for your attention. I open up to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Very, very nice presentation and interesting work. I have actually two questions that are related to each other. So the first one is, like NSF has some programs focusing on cyber training and also on STEM. So one of them, it's called the NOISE program, something like that. The idea is try to understand the preferences of the students or the users from the STEM community, and what they prefer, what is the best way to learn something. So the first question is, how do you see your best practices, fitting this kind of programs and goals? And the second one is another program that they have that it's called the Future Learning for STEM. So to know what are the new technologies, new ways you can teach students, especially undergrads and high school, to learn about Cyberinfrastructure, and STEM in general. So also, how do you see, your best practices of communication fitting this kind of approaches?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think it can be useful to inform how they go about training in the future and the methods that they do for external communication, essentially. This list is not by any means an end all be all or like a exact, science of external communication, but it just provides some useful tools that some researchers, some HPC centers are not aware of that other people are doing around the country.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with that. I like this idea. So I saw also that you mentioned you did some interviews with some HPC people. So were these one-to-one interviews, or are you guys also planning to participate in these workshops and be more on the observational side, and see what's happening and try to get some information and maybe provide some best practices out of that?
So your question is, are we planning on doing other kind of data collection? So just
yes, yeah. If you plan to do more one-to-one interviews, or also joining workshops or events and try to observe how things are happening, so you can extract some information to provide some best practices there.
Sure, yeah. So we would love to join the workshops. We started this project kind of right before 2020, and so that kind of put a nail in our ability to travel to these kinds of workshops. But we definitely do hope to go attend more. So these interviews were actually done as part of a career project with Dr. Kurt Key. So his group were the ones that actually did those interviews. So I didn't actually do them. We just had the transcripts to analyze the data. But we do hope to do more data collection in the future, and observation maybe part of that.